Good afternoon and good evening, everybody, whichever part of the world you are at. Thank you for taking time out and joining us today in this workshop on design fiction. Why I called it a workshop and not a webinar, because the way that we have designed the whole engagement is more on a workshop format, and which would be, I hope to be very engaging for everybody, because we put in certain exercises where you not only get to understand what is design fiction, but also get to experience what is design fiction. So this particular workshop has been brought to you by QGLUE in collaboration with Schoolab. As you would know, that QGLUE happens to be the design arm of QI. QI is an organization which was set up about close to 30 years back, has been working in the domain of process improvement, transformation, quality management, and agility. And as with the changing world, we also evolved and became the pioneers of design-led innovation in India, and of course, stemming from there globally. At QGLUE, we help organizations to empower workforce for innovation by enabling the enterprises for innovation, and then, of course, delivering innovation-based outcomes. That's a bit about QGLUE. Schoolab is an innovation hub based out of San Francisco and Paris. And we have the Schoolab team here today with us. We have Pierre, we have Quentin. Quentin happens to be the country manager at Schoolab in Vietnam. Pierre is the head of innovation and design consulting based out of Paris. And we have Abhinav, who is the head of business development based out of India. So without much ado, I invite the Schoolab team to take us on this particular journey.
Thanks, Sumit, and also big thanks to QGLUE for the invitation and the opportunity. And welcome everybody again. We're very glad to be here today for this introduction to design fiction, to explore together possible futures in order to develop game-changing innovation. So as Sumit mentioned, I'm Quentin. I'm the country manager of Schoolab in Vietnam, and I'll be co-facilitating today's session with Abby and Pierre, that will be introducing themselves later. So before we get started, Pierre, if you can go on the next slides. And to ensure we have everybody on board and ready to collaborate, let's start with a little icebreaker game. So the guidelines are pretty simple. As you can see, you have some drawings. So in the chat, please share the name of the company, the organization that you think is hiding behind each number, and the drawing that are representing the shift of famous organization. And you have a little bit of tips. So you have one, it's an organization that went from hardware to cloud services. Two, from military to urban gears. Three, from soap to gum. And four, from sewing machine to motorcycle. So in the chat, please just up and not directly to me, so that everybody can can see. Don't be shy. Thank you. We have an answer. I'm not going to tell yet if it's the right one, but then there's no up. I'm going to put myself in the meeting chat. All right, so in the chat, please just put a number, put a guess. There's no wrong answer. Oh, the chat to everyone is not available. So I'm okay. Okay, I don't know if you have if you see any answer, Pierre, on your side.
I'm getting. So we have a suggestion that for the first one is Cisco.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, understandable. Okay, I have two good answers. Maybe they're working at the company.
The fourth one would be Harley Davidson.
Interesting. Okay, so while everybody is still thinking, let's reveal the answer and let's see who was right and which organization was hiding behind each drawing. If you can go to the next slide, Pierre. So indeed, I got two good answers in my personal chat. So IBM, and also a good one for the third one. So the shift at IBM reflects well, I think, the change of strategy a company must follow to be successful in the new era. So at the time, from being a leader in hardware to losing billions of dollars in the early 90s with new competition, to then becoming a leader in cloud services. Then you had ISPAC. So I'm not sure what was the trend in India, but in France, for sure, ISPAC bags were a must-have in high school. But originally, ISPAC started out in the 50s as Eastern Canvas product, going from making durable gear for the US military, and then shifted to urban gears. And they have this value proposition of offering 30 years warranty on their bags. Indeed, the third one going from soap to chewing gums. And what was interesting is that they were selling soap and offering promotional items such as chewing gums. And actually, those items became more popular. That's when they shifted and became what they are today, one of the leader in the candy and chewing gum industry. And the fourth one, Suzuki, was initially successful in a weaving machine. But with the growth of Japan, they identified that there was new consumer need and decided to focus on building motorcycles and cars and to become the successful companies that they are today. So why did we start by showing this? Well, really to illustrate that the objective of innovation, as Sumit mentioned in the introduction, and applying design fiction is to rethink your organization with a 360-degree approach from the product and services, but also to the channels, diversification, culture change, asset, to even HR incentives, and also to take a step back and understand how organization, industry leaders would probably have disappeared, and we've had some story of leaders who disappeared without those shifts, and understanding how changing the present, understanding trends, enable them to enjoy prosperous growth. But Pierre will tell you more very shortly. So on the next slide. So now that we are all on board for today's agenda, we'll start by a short introduction of Schoolab, really quickly going on the methodology, then a few collaborative exercises in breakout rooms that we will conclude by a pitch, feedback session, and Q&A session. Let me briefly introduce Schoolab. If you can go on the next slide, Pierre, thank you. On the next one again, thank you. So Schoolab is an innovation studio that was created back in 2005 by 3 co-founders in Paris, really with the idea to apply the innovation framework and methodology they discovered in Stanford, in California, in the Silicon Valley, to support organization, enhance an innovative and entrepreneurial culture. So for the last 16 years, we've been building a unique ecosystem, a global ecosystem, to support organizations' transformation from startup, even students and academics, to multinational, to accelerate their innovation project. So to sum up, our mission as an impact-driven innovation studio is to enable connection and collaboration between different stakeholders. That's what we're going to try today. Foster knowledge development through real-life experiences, with the goal to equip young leaders, entrepreneurs, and managers to create a more inclusive, responsible, and sustainable society and economy. So on the next slide. Thank you, Pierre. Concretely, over the past few years, we've developed 3 key areas of expertise to support our partners to establish and accelerate their innovation strategy. One, from designing and operating open innovation programs and projects, enabling, again, collaboration between private and public sector, students and startups. To support also project acceleration through our business and design innovation consulting services, really to build, design, and launch new products and services. And of course, through coaching and training to enhance this entrepreneurial and innovative culture within your team. And those 3 expertise being boosted by our in-house platform and also physical innovation hubs around the world. So yeah, briefly. So yeah, I'm Quentin, as I mentioned, in charge of our development in Asia, country manager of our entity in Vietnam. I've worked as an innovation consultant and a coach for Schoolab for the past 4 years, applying our methodologies to design new products and services across different industries and market. And very happy to co-facilitate this design fiction with Abby and Pierre that will introduce themselves.
Thank you, Quentin. So hi, I'm Pierre. I've been a designer at Schoolab for the past couple of years now. I have been working on a dozen of projects across industries, from digital consumer product, construction, F&B, and it's true that recently one of the frameworks that has been picking up a lot of interest from our partners has been design fiction, and I'm quite happy today to be the person to take you through a short introduction of the framework that we use, as well as a short exercise that we have prepared for yourself. And we have also Abby with us.
It's good to be here, and it's good to bring Schoolab to India. I work out of New Delhi. Prior to this, I have a formal background in computer science, entrepreneurship, and design from UC Berkeley and Stanford. I've been representing Schoolab for the past couple of years, first in San Francisco and now in Delhi, where I worked on a whole host of projects around startup scouting and innovation consulting. Good to be here again.
Thank you, Abby. So I'll take over from here, and you'll be hearing a little bit from me for the next 20 minutes or so. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but also concise in explaining where all of this come from for us, but also for speculative design in general. Because and here I just want to give a short disclaimer as well, that our goal is kind of to make the case for speculative design and design fiction as very valuable frameworks, and how they translate into the real world, and give you a test of it. Obviously, this is a moving field with a lot of complexity, a lot of nuances, and we have a short span of time to talk about it. So I will focus on really the overview and where it comes from and what it can do as well, why it's important, and before we do the short exercise. So now we like to talk about design fiction and speculative design as frameworks that can help develop a sense of direction, a sense of vision for organizations. And its benefit can translate into building more resilience as an organization across time. And today, as we have to say and have to see and experience that the future is more and more uncertain, this is the reason why this framework has been picking up interest, and because its value has been more easily perceived in those recent events that we have seen, that we thought were really belonging to the realm of fiction, but really have been coming to life and became our daily life, actually. So the likes of which, obviously, the pandemic, I think, clearly ranking as the most recent unexpected event that completely changed the face of the world, the way we consume, the way we move, the way we work, and that will keep on doing so for the next decade. But not only that, when you look also at 2016, events such as Brexit or Trump election, those were events that even the very day before they arrived were still considered to be statistically impossible to happen. And so very, very unpredictable and transformative as well. But you have the subprime crisis as well, or even the emergence of internet technologies. Who would have thought, even 20 years ago, where internet was already there, that 20 years from there, we would be sitting in our offices at home through video conferences and participating into an online workshop, collaborating all together. I think even then that was extremely difficult to anticipate, yet not only it happened, but also it happened and it left a lot of companies in the dust. When you look at, so this slide, all of the companies that you see on this slide are companies that have filed for bankruptcy over the few events that I just mentioned. And so you have this trend of industry and life reshaping events that totally unpredicted, and they are happening more and more because technology is developing faster. And so a lot of companies disappear, or at least have to reinvent themselves. And if they don't do it fast enough, they might disappear. And those were the examples that Quentin just shared in the introduction, that those companies might not be there if they hadn't done the changes that they did. And so this is where there is a need today to turn to our future a little bit further ahead and look at how we will strengthen our sense of direction as organization to build that resilience against those kind of unpredicted events. So yeah, we cannot predict at all what's going to happen, but we can imagine scenarios, and design fiction supports this idea of creating scenarios of improbable, possible, desirable futures for the sake of identifying where we as individuals or as companies, we stand for now, and we stand for in those possible scenarios. So what do we want to build? What do we want to protect ourselves against? What do we want to stop from happening or make happen? And so this is where speculative design provides this very strong framework and very strong idea. It supports the creation of those narratives, those new myths that we need to find. Where do we want to go? What is the switch that we need to make? And I really like this diagram from Elliot Montgomery, mapping speculative design and design fiction on the axis of the constrained world and the unconstrained one, between art and strategy. We often look at visionary people, and I would say, like, maybe the most obvious, most famous one would be Elon Musk, who want to start a colony on Mars. That there are people that are living in a science fiction world. They are a bit crazy. This is totally impossible. But then they circle back into their organization to lay out a vision. So this is the world that we try to build. This is the kind of exploration we want to enable. And so what do we need to do today to make that happen 20 years from now? And when they look at today, with all the constraints that we have in terms of economic, technological, political, economical constraints that we have. And so speculative design and design fiction, they live somewhere into those two ideas of science fiction on one side and design and strategy on the other. Precisely, we like to say that it takes root between speculative design that aims much more at creating alternative world through prototyping, to create conversation, to create a critique of society, and science fiction, which aims more at turning those alternative worlds into stories that we can adopt, that we can see and engage with. And when we talk about, and I think I want to talk a bit more about speculative design, mostly because this is kind of a more unknown subject within the whole design thinking and design field, with this idea that projecting alternative realities through new products or new systems that are pure speculation. They don't exist yet. And I think, for instance, in this case, concept cars are a great example, because we probably all have seen some of them. They often look very otherworldly, and they testify of what mobility, for instance, could look like, and consequently the world around this vision of mobility could look like, from the perspective of a brand, of course, and based on what engineers and designers can see right now in the present as trends. So, for instance, if you look at the concept cars that came out in the last 10 years, they were always electric because climate change, and because we had this big spur of EV technology coming out. They are smaller because socially the family unit is getting smaller as well. So this is the perception of the world that we're having. They have no wheels and by no wheels, I mean, because AI and autonomous driving are kind of taking over. So we don't really need a person to be interacting within the car to drive it. So yeah, I mean, they really testify of what the world could look like, could be. And what creating those speculative design does is that it creates imagination and conversation, because we always circle back to consumer in the end. And so it's going to be triggering some sort of reaction, like I love it or I hate it. This is not the kind of world I want to be part of. And then it gives the company, it gives us as a company a compass of, okay, this is the kind of world we want to make, or this is the kind of world we don't want to make because people don't want it. And if we look in the past, some very broadly shared vision of alternate world have provided a pretty far-reaching compass, and especially for technology. And I have one example that I really like is Jules Verne. You might know him or not know him, but about 20 of his books have been adapted into movies. He was a 19th century French writer, and he wrote books like Journey to the Center of the Earth, or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So you might know Captain Nemo, the Nautilus, all of that, Around the World in 80 Days. And when he was writing that, there was no submarine, there was no air travel, there was no spaceship, nothing. But it was the Industrial Revolution. So he was seeing and capturing the development of the coal industry, the steam machines, and what it could look like far away in the future. And those have, I mean, this imagination and those kind of visions really probably influenced a lot, many entrepreneurs and many engineers in trying to build that. And this is, and this process of what, you know, creating those scenarios is very much how the design fiction framework works. Is that we take what's happening in the present and we try to extrapolate it and make a story of how it could, how this simple progress could look like in 20 years from now. And one example, I think, if you want one good example of something that he wrote that happened, is that he wrote this book, From Earth to the Moon, in 1865. And to give you an idea, the first car was patented, came to the market in the centuries after, like, so in the beginning of the 20th century, and the first patent was in 20 years after that book came out. So basically, when this guy wrote that book, people were traveling on horses and donkeys. And so the point here is that he didn't guess the future. He provided a vision that other picked up and kind of gave them a sense of direction. And so this is kind of the origin of many of those human progresses. It's systematically anchored in the imagination that we develop, and that's the muscle that we develop in organization when we do design fiction and when we do speculative design. And while some exploratory tales, like the ones from Jules Verne, were somewhat desirable, I mean, traveling to space, right? Some other future scenarios work more as cautionary tales, like more dystopian vision, the futures we don't really want to see happening, and then incorporate that also into product design. So I think 1984 or Black Mirrors are really kind of obvious and famous examples of dystopian scenarios where like we put into images and into story the abuses that technology might lead us to, and then give us a vision of what is the world we don't want to shape, we don't want to see, and we don't want to see happening. And, you know, obviously for the NSA kind of case, it led to a series of laws around privacy of data, even though we know that some of those things are still happening. But if you look at Black Mirror, some people have been also comparing some of the credit scores that were existing in China, or also the police robots in Singapore, that kind of thing, a bit more dystopian. And on a light, kind of more light kind of innovation that comes from other scenarios, science fiction scenarios, you have those ones that have been rendered into product and prototype. And the point here that I'm trying to make is that it's not only about vision and strategy at big scale and 50 years or 100 years from now. It's not only about police surveillance or space exploration. It works, speculation works the same way that a design prototype does. The only element that changes is that what it tests the market desirability of an alternative world rather than a product, which as a result, once it's tested and kind of validated by the market, this vision is validated, it makes the organization a lot more resilient, because we know that as long as this is the world that we're trying to create, we will find a market for it. And so, yeah, design fiction very much work as a framework for us to try and be a bit Jules Verne, as well as the engineers that makes it happen. Set that far-reaching vision, test it, and make it happen, or at least steer reality in a different direction. If this is where the fiction come into account. What is our or your organization story and role in making those alternate world happen? And practically, it means exploring a lot of different fictional scenario based on real signals, build a vision, and then land on an action plan to make this future happen. And the risk of not doing that is potentially to leave the shaping of our future to other people or other organizations. So that's the reason why this is a huge opportunity now to look at, what is our myth and how we can reinvent it. So how does it work? Well, the first thing is that, and this is, I think, an underlying factor that is pretty strong, is that we have to integrate is future. It's not a line. There is not a linear process between present and future. We have a lot of different possible scenarios. Actually, we have an infinity of scenarios, and we have a lot of different directions. And so we have to create those scenarios, and in order to project ourselves in alternate worlds. And so how do we do that? Well, we take, as I mentioned, the present signals, what Jules Verne saw in the steam machines, the steam engines, and imagination. So, and this is where we use kind of the what if questions, the what if premise that really helps to open the imagination and kind of steer away from just like, looking at what's happening tomorrow to really look at what could happen 10 years from now. And I think, the what if premise is pretty powerful when you think about it. Most of the science fiction movies that are super famous can be boiled down to that sentence, to that what if. And here, what if we could enter and interfere in people's dream? What if apes were the dominant intelligent species on Earth? What if our world was just a creation made by a machine? Or what if we could know about crimes before they were committed? Are potentially movies that you have seen and you have recognized very, very quickly, because they can all be boiled down to that what if questions. And this is kind of how we're trying to lay out scenarios, and this is how we open imaginaries from the present. So this is what it looks like. It's very diffused. We know that, and on one side we have the capture of what is like the present. So what are the trends that we see, and where, if we try to extrapolate those trends, where they could take us? Is 100% of the population going to become vegan in the next 30 years? Or if, everyone is going to drive EV, AI-powered cars in the next 50 years? Or what if we're just going to destroy the planet and there will be nothing? So it's just like we have to kind of look at what's happening right now and then extrapolate it. And then we have the imagination, which is coming from the what if formulation. And then, and I think this is the most important part for us, for design fiction, what makes it super valuable for organization, is that we come back to the present. We create those scenarios and we come back to the present. Everything has to have a value for organizations, and the biggest one that we can create is a roadmap of how do we go from today to that future that we defined and that we wanted to create. So just to put it in a nutshell, we talk about design, and it remains very anchored on this idea of creating something that is going to deliver value. We want to create this new product or new service out of it, not just stimulate our imagination. And the other thing is that it's not a tech process, it's a human-centered process. The idea is to engineer progress around what people would react positively to. And so it's not about like technological breakthrough at all, on the contrary. And the fiction part is very much focusing on the fact that we want to potentially engineer changes of behavior. And I think this is what Black Mirror or 1984, what made it so powerful, is that it's not a product, it's a scenario, it's a story, and we are hardwired to listen to stories, and they have like this power for us to really change the way we behave a lot more than what products and services can do. And this is where creating those alternate worlds can do something that design can hardly achieve otherwise through products and services, by simply laying out a story, a vision, a narrative where we can be engaged in making a world happen. And so looking at what we want to do today with you. So obviously, we're not going to do a full site study. We did create few scenarios, and what we're going to focus on is the journey of how this scenario happened and what we could create as a product or a service within that scenario. So we're going to focus really on this central piece of decrypting a scenario and then going into creativity to build a new product or a new service for an industry. We're not going to do the circling back to the present and what we're going to be doing from tomorrow, because those are fictional. But that's going to be a good way to kind of see what design fiction is about and how it works, because I think explaining it is always a bit blurry. It's always a lot of nuances. So I think doing it is going to make it a lot more obvious. So yeah, without further wait, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the exercise itself. So what's going to happen? It's very simple. We have, I'm checking right now, 52 people in the room. So we're going to split into groups of 5 in order to totally randomly. We're going to give each team a scenario and each team a worksheet, so with few questions to complete. And the idea is to have a conversation as a group and to fill in the worksheet. So simple enough until now. So just to give you a bit more precision, obviously, when you come into the breakout room, you can say hi, introduce yourself. We have a short time, right? It's 35 already. We have around 20 minutes in the breakout room. So just say hi, introduce yourself briefly. The link to access the presentation and so the scenario and the worksheet is going to be posted. Then after you join your breakout room, and your team number is your breakout room number. So you'll see teams have a number, and so that you find the right scenarios, and so that is going to be indicated by the number of your breakout room. So then you familiarize yourself with the scenario, read the scenario individually, and instead of asking yourself how probable is this scenario, project yourself into this new reality. That it's not about how real this is. It's about what we would do in this case. Read and review the worksheet and write your name and the number at the bottom. There is a little arrow there to indicate you where it happens. It's in the comment section. And then after the canvas are numbered, so you go from 1 to 4. You discuss with your team, you fill in step by step, you complete the canvas, and you nominate a speaker to report back. And for that specific speaker, it's just 2 minutes. You briefly introduce what was the scenario, what is the impact on society that you have discussed with your team, and you pitch what is your idea or concept or service or artifact that you would like to, that you created as a team in this scenario. So that's how it's going to go. Before we go into the scenarios, I'm going to go briefly to just give you an overview. If there is any question, because I don't see any, but feel free anyway to share. In the meantime, I'm going to go a bit faster on the multiverse. So yeah, I mean, welcome to the multiverse, because we are kind of drifting apart from reality for a second and going to multiple timelines and multiple possibilities that have happened on different timescales. So the first scenario that we have is about hardware. China has made strategic investment in the lithium triangle in South America, and now they control most of the resources that is needed to make computers, phones, and other pieces of hardware. And so the discussion is going to be about what kind of impact does that create for the industry and what kind of new developments we see happen in this world. The second one is about a great hack of autonomous vehicles that is affecting the way car manufacturers are securing the products they design, along with a range of problems and a range of consequences for cybersecurity, so car manufacturing, And that's going to be about discussing what happens and what kind of product or service could come out of such an event. The third one is focusing on energy. It's focusing on kind of smart grids, if you know it. Individual consumers have learned how to take advantage of the power that EV batteries possess, and all of a sudden now they are empowered to use that energy, to share it, to sell it, to stock it. And so what does that create? What is the impact for the finance industry, for the energy industry? The fourth scenario is around entertainment and e-commerce. Now the digital media, e-commerce has merged with digital media, and you can purchase items in the blink of an eye directly within entertainment pieces. So what does that create for the entertainment e-commerce industry, digital marketing industry? Then we have disabled population increases tenfold in the next generation. So what kind of new products come out of it? And finally, the last one we have is the meta world, where high fidelity virtual reality has become mainstream, and people care more about their persona in the virtual world than they do in the real world. So what does that create? What kind of new products and services appear? That's going to be your task. So when you click on the link, you're going to reach that slide, and on that slide you look at what is the breakout room number you are in, and you click on the team that share the same number. So that's about it. If there is any question, please feel free to send me a direct message or send a message in the chat. Otherwise, we will send people in breakout rooms, please.
I didn't understand, how do we get into rooms? Like, what is the criteria?
Sorry, what is the criteria?
How do we get into rooms? How do we?
So we will auto split in 1 second. So we'll assign rooms randomly. It's going to be 6 to 7 people per room, and every room is going to have a room number. Based on that, that's your default team number. So you click on this worksheet, it's going to take you to the worksheet you have to fill out. So it's only one.
Okay.
And we'll come into every breakout room in case there's any questions.
Yes. Thank you, Abby. Welcome back. I hope that you managed to get through all the exercise. I'm going to share again the presentation. All right. I guess what we can do first is to share the worksheets and see up. Team one, we were talking. So Shavi, you want to share a bit what we discussed about? Rapidly, just in a couple minutes, so we can.
Yeah, I'll take it from here. So basically, just a second. Hello, is my voice audible?
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes.
very well, loud and clear.
Yeah. So basically, our topic was scenario 1, China comes first. And the thesis was China has made strategic investments in the lithium triangle in South America, allowing them to control mostly all raw materials used in key hardware. China is able to use all the resources for national interest or leverage this unique position on international deals. So this was our thesis. And basically we were getting to getting ideas on what do we do with that lithium, how other nations can use it, how they can develop their country with the lithium. So how did we get there? Tell the story between now and this scenario. We were understanding how smart we could manufacture, have our own, how we can have new hardwares that is manufactured from lithium. Like rather than depending on China for the products, we can start developing new products with lithium, and maybe a raw material which can be exchanged in terms of that. And would somebody else want to go after me for the next one?
Oh, we had, oh, fuck, I forgot. Who was it?
Yeah,
Yes.
here. So the impact on economy was, so we make the hardware very cheap so that it is easily available for the consumers. So they can come up with multiple products which they can develop on their own. And also, there is always, currently because of COVID situation, there is a dispute between China and India where we don't want to use China products. So to avoid this, we want to probably outsource the products to different countries rather than connecting with China. So we can connect with Italy or maybe Japan and so other countries. And then we get the hardware from outside China.
And the new product that we were discussing is making very elaborated toys for children to stop using phones. So nowadays, if you see what has happened, like when we were young, we never used to spend our time on mobile phones. We used to go out, we used to learn things practically, we used to interact with people, we used to play with everyone. But nowadays, what has happened, children are stuck on their phones the whole time. So maybe we can make some innovative toys for children through which they can learn, and that is where we can start using lithium, because toys use a lot of lithium. So this way it could benefit the children, which is our who are going to be the who are going to be the future of the world. So we can make them learn also in an innovative way, rather than just giving them YouTube, switching on YouTube and giving them such things to learn.
Thank you, Shavi. I think one interesting thing that sometimes come from speculative scenarios and design fiction is also that is that the alternate world is not necessarily something that has more tech in it. Sometimes it can be just like a different model of society that has less, and potentially living in a world where China control a very key elements of the supply chain for hardware might lead us to be a bit more frugal with hardware because of the current state of political relationship with between India and China. So, but thank you very much. I think it was very enlightening and it was a good conversation. Is there any other group that would like to share quickly?
Yeah, and we'd love also to potentially get your feedback. So don't hesitate to open your mic, share a little bit of what you discussed if you don't want to specifically share what you did, and we'll be sharing also a feedback form in the chat to get your feedback on this experience.
Yeah, hi, this is Paras. I just wanted to add a few points on the same scenario. The scenario given, but the way I understood is maybe they use this lithium triangle, and I went one step ahead, looks like. I assume that once they have the access to this key hardware, I'm thinking they are supplying it, and while they are supplying it, they might be putting some technology which whenever this batteries or that key hardware will be used in any other system, they will able to understand the raw materials used to build that entire system. So with that, China will also have access to anybody is building something with batteries. They will get to know what kind of a raw materials being used, and that is for their advantage, because once they know, they can build those kind of products very cheaply in China. So that will have impact on most of the other industries like automobile, IT industries, and then it will have an impact of or threat to these industries, because whatever they are trying to bring into the market, China already knows about it, right? So then the new development could be like how they can secure it, or how they can avoid getting the material from China, but reaching out to other natural resources or elsewhere other countries and try to get these natural resources for building these hardwares. And the product and services wise, again, as you mentioned, probably how we can build something which is avoiding involvement of China. So those kind of products we can think about building. Like one aspect you said about not to use those kind of available resources, but think about something frugal, innovation, and focus on not utilizing the advanced technology, but just go with the normal what we used to do earlier days. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I think what's really interesting about these guys is what they've named their concept. Is that a coincidence or?
CCCP?
Yeah, I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Is it the good one?
Yeah, it's I mean, Chinese Communistic Party, right, is also CCP.
No, just the thought came in terms of, design thinking is completely, in terms of human-centered approach.
Yeah.
So everything we build in, it has to be in line with what a consumer or customer think, and that's how we will be able to build a strong thing.
I like it.
Can I put up a point here?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is a typical case of a leverage that a country has got probably. So probably our new product can be leveraging their leverage. So see, it's a natural product, lithium. They use it and they sell it. We buy it. Probably our new product could be based on the reusability of the same product, which will decrease our dependability on lithium every time to buy from them. So probably a reuse can be initiated, or some technology advancement where lithium products can be reused into catering the same at a lower cost.
I think that's very astute. In fact, I think the Indian government specifically has a scheme for this. It's a scrapping policy where they actually pay you to dispose of things like old cars, where they can still extract a lot of lithium out of.
Yeah, I think the reuse is definitely one of the solution, or one of the ways that we could work around the dependability. And I love also the dystopian side of it, where China could then somehow see and capture all of the innovation and manufacture it cheap, or even, who knows, create some some way of spying on people, because they have access to the hardware of the world.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Maybe we can also think in terms of other elements like nickel ion batteries we can made up of, and we can even think about hydrogen also.
Yeah, alternative materials. Yeah, thank you. Well, I would love to hear about all of the other groups that didn't speak, but I think I just don't want to run too far out of time. So if you have any feedback, please share it, and make sure that you share it also in the form that is being shared in the chat. And I will try and go back to the main presentation just to show you the last slide that we have. If I can go back here, up. It's a bit down. It's Quentin to wrap up, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go directly to your slide, but and I'm sorry that we couldn't hear about everyone, but I just love the spirit and the fact that you played the game, and I hope that you enjoyed it, because it is actually a pretty fascinating field and process.
Indeed, yeah, and it's always tricky when we have a 1 hour slot that we went a little bit over to go through those collaborative exercises, but really the idea and the approach is to generate conversation, debate, and really trying also to push you to think out of the box through creating those scenarios. So a big up to Pierre, Abby, and also QGLUE for doing this research and creating those scenarios. And also thanks to all of you for the creative ideas. So in terms of our design fiction offer and services that we deliver exclusively with QGLUE in India, they are all about finding the right balance between collective intelligence, so through customized design fiction workshop experiences, really to enable your teams to become experts on future planning and project acceleration, so really landing on roadmaps. To, as you can see, with this 5-step approach of what Pierre presented really going into extended strategic consulting with dedicated teams of industry experts and consultants from Schoolab and from QGLUE. So through this step-by-step timeline from research and identifying those weak signals. So we did a bit of research, of course, to come up with those scenarios. So creating those scenarios and then going through futurology to land really on concrete short, middle, and long-term roadmaps and action plans really to enable you to stay ahead of your industry. And we've done this in different industry. So yeah, so I won't go into details on the framework, but yeah, feel free to connect with us, the QGLUE team, if you want to learn more. We'll be more than happy to have a meeting with one of our consultants to better understand your needs and also your objectives.
Pierre, there's a question in the chat box for you.
Yes, I've seen how we differentiate design thinking mindset and design fiction. So those two things are very, very close to one another. The difference is that design fiction potentially look at alternate worlds where design thinking focus on products and services. So when you start the design thinking process, you look into pain points, you look into user experience, and you try to identify where are the opportunities to create new products and services. When you do design fiction, you're trying to identify a direction and a map of what is the future that we want to create for the world and for our organization, and how do we go there and how do we get there. So we start. The nuance is that it's still obviously like very user centric. The difference is that the design thinking is very anchored in the present, and design fiction is anchored in the future and what the world could look like in 10, 15, 20 years from now, which is like a slight difference, I would say. And where does the design element come into it? Well, the design element comes into when we talk about speculative design, it comes into the prototype, right? Like we have to create a narrative. You have to create the story, and you have to create the artifact that projects you into this alternative world. And this process is a design process, because we talk to, so instead of talking to users or instead of talking to and doing like a user research, what we're going to try and do is do more of this future prospective study. We're still going to talk to people, but we're going to try and more look into what are the signals now and extrapolate them. It's not about really anchored, once again, not anchored in the present. And it's like, how do we can solve problem now? Is how we can, it's more about how we can build, test and prototype a world vision and see whether people would adopt it or not.
I don't think there is any other question, but feel free to shoot out in the chat.
Yeah, this is just a comment.
Yeah, it's definitely focusing on strategy, and it's a framework that focus more on the higher level of vision. But then after it comes all the way. So first you have a prototyping aspect in creating the scenario, right? Where you try and do it in a user-centric way. And then after, there is also the fact that once you have your vision, you come back to your roadmap of what do you have to do tomorrow. And this is where also you create something, you create projects, and you create a roadmap that it is anchored in the present and is anchored also on your capabilities and is more like design thinking minded. Oh, thank you, Aditya.
Aditya, I'll reach out to you sometime this week for the same.
Sumit, I have one point to share.
Sure, please go ahead.
This is Ahmed here. I'm just thinking loud on one of the aspect of how future could be. okay, in next 10, 15 years or 10, 20 years from now, I'm trying to relate one of the aspect, which is, human behavior. So would that be like, since we know, the technology or a lot of things around will change eventually, how do we also, measure or probably predict or possibility of, what could be the human behavior in terms of, how they perceive certain things in the longer run? Can that be also a possibility?
So if we go the extended route, I think a big part of this is a big part of the creating scenarios aspect of it. So I think you factor in any changes in technology or social progress that translates to a change in human behavior,
Yeah.
and then you extrapolate scenarios on the basis of that.
Correct.
How that's different from how we did it today is we already had the scenarios planned based on some clues we had about the present and not knowing too much about the audience that was going to attend, so to keep it generalized. But if you do it in a company setting, all those scenarios can be hyper relevant and a lot of thought goes into actually creating them, one of which is potential changes in human behavior and psychology.
Correct, exactly. So the reason I'm asking also, Abhinav, is thanks for sharing your thoughts. The current scenario where in the next year, for example, just I'm taking a hypothetical situation of the next year, there are a lot of inventions already in place, new approaches, considering what has been the impact of this pandemic. So now with my current workspace, I want to anticipate how the team is going to be responsive, or how they will perceive these changes, and would they want to be adaptable towards those new inventions, or they probably start to take a step back. So how am I supposed to start preparing for that, for based on the the new possibilities which are going to come in the market in due course of time? That's what I was trying to understand.
So I think we can have like an extended call, once we get to know exactly more details about what you do and how big your team is.
Yeah.
But design fiction, anything forward looking, as Pierre mentioned, becomes a better strategy than design thinking. If you're imagining, for example, the future of work at your company.
Yeah. Well, sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting. How much product innovation potentially is woven into this particular course, and how much of like trend focused innovation are you guys covering? Because obviously the prototypes can be anything, as we know within design fiction, but how much of that is going to be not so much scenario based, but more based on practical prototyping or fiction around physical products?
QGLUE, maybe do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think to take an example on this, we recently did this kind of mission to support a dairy multinational company in Vietnam, who did actually a shift towards sustainability and CSR by really matchmaking their financial objective with their sustainability objective. So having KPIs on those two things. And one of the big shift that they had in terms of rethinking their strategy was how are they going to adapt to climate change, but also to consumer behavior change in terms of consumption of dairy product, etc. And so what we did is we developed scenarios based on climate change, and also based on the current situation that those kind of sanitary crises with humans could happen also, and has already happened with animals. And so from this, in a country like Vietnam, which consume a lot of meats, fishes, etc., we had to rethink their product, their production, etc. And the one of the prototype that we developed through this was really testing out a campaign with their dairy product being completely plant-based, which is something that they already have in their R&D, but then in terms of market acceptance, they couldn't launch And so we really tried out the prototyping and the design and the development of the new product through creating some fake advertisers, etc., to test the market and then to validate if there could be first a short-term opportunity and what could be the long-term opportunity and the value proposition. So it really depends. And we did another one for a major retail company. For this, I mean, I won't be able to share too much, but basically the output of this campaign was around sustainability. Was a major advertisement, TV commercial, etc. So that's also how we land on first doing some prototype, which are videos, advertising, etc., to then validate the desirability and go into the feasibility and the viability to launch the product. I don't know if I completely answered your your question, but I think through example, it's always better.
Yeah, so definitely design fiction for prototyping, essentially. So we create prototypes that we want to get active data from and test them out, is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we talk also about, so this, there you have one aspect where what Quentin mentioned, which is the final output, right? When you have created your scenario and you have projected what is the vision that you have or that you want to build, and then after you create a prototype to test that vision out. So in this case, it was potentially, you know, plant-based food or plant-based cheese. You have another aspect of prototyping, and it's more like, you know, what I showed, the concept car, where we just want to create an artifact of a potential reality that could happen, and then see how do people react to that as well. And that is more like how we build it's not about strategy, and it's not about the strategy for the company directly, but it's more about like an engineering and a design vision for a product, and as a testimony for this new alternate world. So for instance, for us, the artifact was just like the slide where you had the text of what the scenario is about, but just an object that you create could be also your scenario, basically. It could be the way you share and you project people into this alternate reality. And what the concept car, I think, does, what some other object that look otherworldly, what could we have, like some pieces of architecture as well, can take us into a different reality, while also being prototypes, because those are obviously just here for being tested and see how people react.
And I think the split is largely a function of whether we do an actual prototype or just an artifact, you know, a function of where that company is in terms of timeline and what sort of budget and runway they have to implement this new thing.
Oh, that's true. Very valid point.
Any more thoughts, comments, views, questions around the room?
Really appreciate the questions and comments, by the way.
Okay, I'm assuming that you know, you would have gone through the feedback form and filled the feedback form for us. That will help us to improve the service delivery for future. If there are no comments around, then I think we can go ahead and close the session. Thank you very much to all the participants who took out time to join us. Thanks for taking part in the activities and you know, share with us your point of view. Any last thoughts from Quentin, Pierre, or Abhi before we close?
No, I mean, thank you, Samit, for the opportunity to talk about design fiction, speculative design. Those are really exciting field and very valuable ones that gain to be known.
Great.
Yeah, no, thanks again for the invitation, for the participant engagement, and again, as Samit and Abhi mentioned, fill in the feedback form, and of course, all the other question and potential needs would be addressed with a more extended meeting in the coming days. So thank you again for your time. And Abhi, one last word.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Sumit, and you know, the QGLUE team for, you know, helping us do this in India. I think we're at a very interesting inflection point. where the world is moving further away from globalization. So it's a good chance to do an international event, have people from all corners of the world come in. So really appreciate you. Thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.
So everybody, I've dropped my coordinates in the chat in case anybody would want to reach out to me for specific questions. I'd be more than happy, and we would be sharing the recording as well as the slides with you once we close the session.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sumit, and thank you, everyone.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the connecting and thanks for the wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.